This piece of content is brought to you by Micro Center. Check the links in the description to check out the new promotions for their opening of their Santa Clara location, laptop savings events, and their new promotions with Affirm. And then it is also brought to you by JLC PCB. Use the link in the description to get a $10 coupon for their Flex PCBs, and we'll talk about these sponsors more later. But for now, let's just get on with the show. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom, and today I am joined by my co-host,
Dan.
Dan, how are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing well. It's getting to that time of the year down here in Nashville where finally it is warm. It was pretty weirdly pleasant, actually, until now. Usually, by Memorial Day, it's quite a bit hotter, but we've just been chilling with like 75-degree days until it is what me and my girlfriend call hot dog weather. That is when Jesse is hot within 5 minutes of being at the dog park or going on a walk.
Oh, and it's fun. It's apparently supposed to be 90 tomorrow, and
where you are in Minnesota.
Yep, and fire weather. So yay!
This is again, we're retreading old ground, but this is the thing I keep trying to explain to my parents. They're like, well, you moved to Nashville, it's hot there. It's like, it's pretty much the same summer. You just get colder winters because the north of the Midwest in the United States is just cursed with hot as hell summers and also freezing cold winters.
But slightly less snow than out east. So I guess there's that advantage, Tom.
Yes, because there's less water. So...
But so I don't think I'm going to be going out tomorrow, but we'll see.
All right. So, all right. Well, I guess I'll just steam right into this episode. We didn't have any opening corrections or reader mails, although please remember, you can submit corrections if you think we said something wrong, assuming it's not just in all caps and actually seems like a well-researched submission if you join the Moore's Law said Patreon at the lowest tier right now. But because no one did, we'll just get into the first question. So, our first story. Story number one, AMD announces Zen 5 Threadripper at Computex. Quoting here from Serve the Home. Taking to the stage at Computex 2025, AMD's Jack Hoon announced that the company's Threadripper family of CPUs is receiving its long-awaited Zen 5 facelift, upgrading the CPUs to AMD's latest architecture. The chunky chips with up to 96 Zen 5 CPU cores in the flagship Threadripper Pro 9995WX part will be available in July. So for the moment, at least, AMD is facing limited competition, therefore, in the HDT and workstation markets. Intel has yet to announce any new workstation parts based on their Granite Rapids server hardware. So Intel's current lineup is their existing Sapphire Rapids, and really that means I think there was a refresh with Emerald Rapids. They still call it Sapphire, based Xeons. A lack of CPU cores already put those chips on the back foot against Threadripper 7000, let alone 9000. And so this is a gap that is just going to widen. So, yep, Zen 5 Threadripper, codename Shimada Peak, has long been rumored, and it's finally out. AMD is pushing their advantage in workstations, not just with the new cores, but also with much higher supported memory speeds. DDR5 6400 mega transfer is now the standard, up from 5200 before. AMD's test against Intel's best are showing anywhere from a 40% to an almost 250% performance win in real applications. That's 96 Zen 5 cores against 60 Sapphire Rapids cores. Oh, correction, that'd be like 150% more, or 2.5x. Still, it seems AMD is feeling the pressure that Sapphire Rapids workstations put them under. This is the first Threadripper launching less than a year after the standard desktop SKUs since Zen 2. In that case, Zen 2's Threadripper launched about a month after the desktop variants, but since then, it's been a year or more since we've ever seen it. Additionally, AMD is also keeping the same socket, not making you upgrade, and they're even letting their Pro chips use the cheaper and more limited TRX 50 chipset. So with Zen 3 and 4, AMD stepped off the gas pedal as Intel was utterly unable to compete in workstation with their 14 nanometer. God, that's right. 28 core chips. But this time now, it seems like they are increasingly getting more aggressive in this segment once again. Although it must be noted, they're going up to 96 cores. They could be going up to 128 or arguably 192 cores if they really wanted to. So they're still not, flooring it, if you will, to use the prior metaphor.
And they're not really increasing the IO at all. So it's mostly just an update on their core architecture, which, I guess puts them more ahead of where they were with Intel in the past. But I don't know. Intel's given them a lot of breathing room in this I guess now slightly less neglected space because they actually followed up with this with not like basically after the next generation of desktop CPUs comes out like they have been in the past.
Yeah, so I don't know how much I really have to say about this. I think I saw some of the pricing too, and it's insanely expensive. I don't even think it's worth going over. Let me look. I should probably at least look this up, but my memory is that flagship part. Let's see here. Yeah, 13,000. I remember correctly.
So I won't be buying this, I guess. That's a big shocker.
But I think it's worth pointing out, is Intel putting some pressure on AMD? I can say yes from firsthand experience. I know many people in professional, especially in digital audio work. We had that one guest on a while ago that talked about this, where they don't need 128 cores. And so it would make sense. But what they want is more than 16 cores, and they want a ton of IO. That is something that Intel is offering. And so it would make sense that AMD would, instead of focusing on 1 million cores, would just focus on trying to get the latest architecture that is better than Intel's workstation architecture just out as quickly as possible. But I think it's worth pointing out that if, I don't remember what the fastest Zen 5 EPYC chips are, but they have some 8 to 32 core models with insane TDPs that go to really high clock speeds. I mean, look, if AMD really wanted to push it here, I have no doubt they could have 5.8 gigahertz models, all V-cache models up to 192 core. I know it'd be Zen 5C, but at the clock speeds it'd be at, it wouldn't matter. Zen 5 or even 128 core Zen 5 models for under 10 grand. So they're being more aggressive than before. I mean, clearly they've seen something that indicates Intel's taking some workstation market share back, but they could be doing more.
And is there much information on when Granite Rapids will come to workstation, or is that not?
I mean, I have a source I've spoken with recently in the professional world. It sounded like he was expecting to get some samples soon if he doesn't have them already for early testing. So, I mean, I think they're going to launch this year. I mean, I think there's no doubt in that. But my memory is there were old roadmaps too of Zen 5 Threadripper that indicated a late 2025 launch. I think I leaked that a year or two ago. And the fact that we're seeing it in the middle of this year, or at least announced in the middle of this year and not launching in December, again, it shows some degree where AMD wants to get this out before Granite Rapids.
Yeah, there's some urgency at least from them. Yeah, where there really hasn't been, like you said, since Zen 2 with Threadripper.
And it's interesting. I was just thinking of this when I looked at, we were going to cover this story for this episode today, and it's would I consider if they had it come out at the same time, some sort of 48 core, so just 4 12-core chiplets, Zen 6 Threadripper as an upgrade, or Zen 7, something like that. And I don't know. I have to say, if desktop is going to 24 cores, and especially if they ever add any new chipset that lets you have at least 4 NVMe drives, I can't see myself really doing it unless something changed where they're not charging 13 grand for the top one, therefore not charging, probably what, I don't even know what it is, $5,000 for a 48 core, because I'm not paying that much. I'm not going to use it. I wouldn't.
Yeah, and for you, I think, like you said, having slightly better I/O than what you get with desktop would really be the big advantage for you. I don't see a use case where you need 96 cores, although maybe I'm wrong.
No, and I'll point this out to some, if the reason you want more I/O, this is a decision I came to with my current upgrade to a Zen 4 X3D 16-core system from Minis Forum. Instead of trying to get some other big motherboard that can support a ton of SSDs, I was like, is the difference in cost between this motherboard, which was $600, including the CPU cooling and everything, is it worth going to some $600 Asus Pro motherboard so I can have 4 NVMEs, when it might just be cheaper to get the more expensive 2 or 4 terabyte NVMe drive, because you can go up to 8 terabytes already on this with just 2 drives. So why, what, like, do you really need a bunch of NVMe drives if it's cheaper to get a cheaper motherboard and just 2 really big ones? I think that's something people need to consider. And outside of that, I guess I would be interested if like Hardware Unboxed or some major tech channels did real mixed use gaming, professional mega tasking reviews of these, because I remember the last one I believe that Hardware Unboxed really paid attention to. I believe they pretty much ignored Zen 4, but with Zen 3, they were like, there's like almost no support. Like these have come out so late, the Zen 3 Threadrippers, that is, that at this point, like AIBs, or should I say, like motherboard manufacturers had like barely any offerings with barely any BIOS updates. I thought there was one that didn't even really get an official fixed BIOS, like if it was MSI or who. And it's because the market share for these, because of how long they were taking to come out after the desktop models, was so lagging that they just didn't even really have proper software support. So that's another thing that would make me not even consider these anymore, is the second you tell me that like AMD is neglecting them so much that OEMs don't even see it as high volume enough because they're too expensive to even bother making, I go, yeah, I'm not interested in Threadripper at all then. And so I'll be interested to see if that's something that gets fixed here, because they're still really expensive. So I wonder how OEMs motherboard manufacturers regard this.
Yeah, because for something like Threadripper, you would think you would want robust software support for spending that much on your system and using it to make money. But
exactly. And so that is something that AMD better fix this time around.
Yeah.
Hayubu writes in and says, do you find it funny that Intel's own marketing teams over the decades primed many average consumers to pay attention to core counts first when deciding what they wanted to buy, which as a scientist, I know getting regular people to remember anything important is hard. Now AMD can just offer higher numbers and reap the benefits of Intel's prior marketing. Well, and on this, I know Adora TV covered years ago, of course, that he knew that Intel had this huge initiative with OEMs to make parallel threading in games work better, while still for some reason only selling quad cores to consumers. And they were doing this because they knew with Coffee Lake they were going to offer 6 cores and then 8 cores with Ice Lake Desktop, which got canceled, of course, as we know now. And by the time that came out, they wanted perfect 8-core support, and they had it done before they launched it. And right when Zen 1 and Plus launched, AMD got all the benefits. And it's just funny to think of that. I mean, I don't know, Intel's got this. This is a problem, though. This is the problem that comes with only thinking about yourself and pretending the competition doesn't exist, which Intel can't do anymore, but they did for so long.
Yeah.
Like they pushed for core counts. They parallelized their software with gamers, with game makers. AMD comes in with higher core counts, gets all the benefits. And then Intel goes, well, we're the most efficient still. They advertise their efficiency and that AMD's cores are weaker than their cores. AMD has the most efficient X3D cores. That's all Intel told their fans to care about. And now AMD beats them in that. Even AI. They won't shut up about AI everywhere. Pat Gelsinger, AI's everywhere. Oh, AI. AMD just launches NPUs with higher tops. So it's like, I don't know. AMD has this, Intel has this tendency to like try to like focus on these little things and like do somersaults and like twist and like, this is why ours is better. And all they're doing is setting up AMD to just focus on that one thing, one gen, and beat them. And they just told all of their fans that's all they should care about. And I will say, what happens if Zen 6 comes out before Nova Lake or whatever? And I've heard Zen 6 is on, well, we know AMD's confirmed it's on N2X and it's going to go to insane clock speeds. I mean, what happens if all Intel wouldn't shut up about is clock speeds? Then after Raptor Lake, they have lower clock speeds with Core Ultra, and then AMD drops like a 6.5 gigahertz Zen 6. All of your marketing has been clock speeds from Alder Lake, well, from what, like Comet Lake to to now, and then you just lost that and gave it to AMD again. I don't know.
Well, at the end then, Tom, what we really need to pivot to is low power cores. That's the thing that really matters. That's where Intel is pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, and they are. Like, that's a funny thing you bring that up. The joke you're setting up is they've been now talking about, well, but our E cores are so efficient. AMD's about to have low power cores, and then there's, well, again, you're just setting up your fan base to like certain things that all AMD has to do is come in and actually not just stumble into making it because they have to actually do it right. and then all of a sudden now you need to explain to your fans, well, why that's not actually that important anymore. I don't know. All right. Well, let us now move on to probably the most exciting news to at least this community, from what I can tell, in the past couple of months. Story number 2, RX 9090 XT or 9080 XT, whatever they eventually call it, engineering samples leaked by Moore's Law is Dead. Quoting Notebook Checks reporting on this, and then moving on to some editorialization. Internal AMD lab tests reportedly show the cards running game clocks between 3.4 to 3.7 gigahertz. The GPUs that Moore's Law said talks about feature a 256-bit GDDR7 memory interface and configurations with up to 32 gigabytes of VRAM. Some samples reportedly also include 16 gigabyte variants, and in terms of power, the cards have been pushed well past 450 watts under load. Some occasional samples that have been overclocked exceeding 500 watts. According to early benchmark data as well, shared confidentially with Tom from Moore's Law is Dead, performance uplifts at 4K resolution average 28% over the 9070 XT, with peaks of up to 45% in certain workloads. We'll get to that. Actually, I have a theory on why one would be that high. This would place the 9080 XT engineering samples in direct contention with RTX, not 5080, but probably 5080 Super, and possibly even trading blows or beating the 4090, depending on implementation and final clock speeds. And so there you go. After weeks of hints out of this channel, we've finally gotten enough information from our sources to tentatively leak that AMD is at least testing heavily overclocked variants of some sort of likely 64 compute unit RDNA 4 cards. I say likely because technically I really only know the memory configuration and performance and rough power. And the press is going wild with this info. Now, to be clear, this is by no means a confirmation that this sort of product will launch to gamers. We don't know exactly what it is, but we do feel confident that there are 3.4 to 3.7 gigahertz cards with 16 and 32 gigabytes of GDDR7 being tested out there. And because they're clocked that fast, because they have GDDR7, it is very likely that this is a new revision of the Navi 48 die, not just some overclocked binning like a lot of people were speculating AMD would launch. After all, going this fast and using a new type of memory is almost certainly pointing to a new iteration that is on TSMC N4X or possibly even N3X. That would almost certainly be required. Now, much remains uncertain at this moment. We don't know if AMD will launch this, what memory configuration they'll finally go with, or what the final clock speeds will be at stock settings. But this does show that AMD probably has a path to compete with or even beat a 5080 or the leaked 5080 Super. If this effort works out, AMD could be competing in the high end this generation after all. And with die sizes similar to the standard Navi 48, or if on N3X, likely even smaller and not pulling from 4 nanometer supply, this could provide a significant supply advantage to AMD over Nvidia in this market that Team Green has all but completely abandoned. All right, so I know this is something me and you have basically talked about every other night we've played video games for the past few months. What do you think now that it's out in the open, Dan?
I mean, I think this is exciting to see them compete at I think where AMD likes to compete a lot of the time between NVIDIA's top end and second top end GPUs. And I think if they could even supply just a 24 gigabyte, not the full 32 gigabyte variant that's being speculated about, that could be a 50/50/50/90/50/80 killer, just with that VRAM advantage. So I think if they can manage to beat the 5080 even at like a slight decent loss in efficiency at that point, definitely would be worth putting out as long as they can put it out for like a somewhat reasonable price.
Yeah, I have no doubts that they could match the 5080's efficiency. The question is if they would match 4090 efficiency if they pushed it that hard, or I guess that's really about the same thing. If they could get to 5090 efficiency, that is to say, what, like 20% weaker than the 5090 while only using 500 watts? Never mind. I don't think they would have problems meeting the 5090's efficiency either, now that I say that out loud. Because at the end of the day, we've seen some 9070 XT samples clocked to like 3.2, 3.3 gigahertz out there. It's rare, but you can do it sometimes. And if you do that, I think they typically go to 360, 400 watts. And that's not that different than a 5080.
No, that's not too
despite
bad.
being out of the optimal power band, and it matches it or trades blows occasionally in some games. And so, especially if it's on like N4X and it's the voltage curve is adjusted to try to hit that high of a clock.
Mhm.
No, I think this could be. I guess I don't know what I would tell them. If you can match the 4090 and beat the 5080, just go to 450 watts. Who really cares, man? But
I would agree.
if you can hit, I think there would be two models anyways, actually. Let me actually switch to this question here just to continue the configuration question. This piece of content is brought to you by JLC PCB and their Transparent Flex PCB products. In addition to supporting traditional yellow, black, and white PCB materials, JLC PCB now also offers transparent PCBs. Imagine the visual experience electronic products can offer when they shed their bulky enclosures and use transparent PCBs as the foundation. These have high optical clarity with 85% light transmittance for superior visual performance, excellent thermal stability, withstanding temperatures up to 200 degrees Celsius, SMT assembly are compatible with fully supporting surface mount technology on transparent substrates, and they are cost-effective, offering 30 to 50% lower price compared to typical market rates without compromising quality. You can get these PCBs for $5.80 and get a $10 coupon for Flex PCBs at JLC PCB through the link below that supports the channel and also gives you the best possible pricing on these excellent products. So please check those out to support the channel. And thank you once again to JLC PCB for sponsoring this content. Cypher Cookie writes in. He says, "Hi, Tom and Dan. I loved hearing about AMD's new big, in all caps, 9000 series GPU. I always thought that the 9070 XT RAM size didn't make sense, especially after the 7900 XT had 20 gigabytes of RAM. Well, this is 70, though, not 90. Do you think that when the 9080 XT gets released, there will be some 9070 XT 20 or 24 gigabyte model? No, that'd be impossible. It doesn't use GDR7. This, to me, gives it a clear distinction for each of the respective cards from the low end, starting with 16 to 20 to 24, and then like 32 gigabyte cards. So now the way I would configure this, I think people miss the kind of elegance that, in a way, AMD pulled off with the 9070 and 9070 XT. I know they're just priced $50 apart, but the 9070 gives you like 85% of the performance or something of the 9070 XT, while consuming almost 100 watts less energy, and therefore allowing for cheaper coolers and a kind of different segmentation in the aftermarket cooler realm. Like if you're going to use your super expensive coolers, yeah, I mean, you can charge $750, I guess, if you push this to 3.3 gigahertz. If you're not going to, just call it a 9070 and put it below 650 eventually, hopefully. That's not the case in the US yet. I would do a similar thing with whatever they end up calling these. Like what I would do, what I would personally do is I would have a 32 gigabyte card that has the full die, call it the 9090 XT. It depends on performance. If it trades, blows, or loses to the 5080 Super, I would make that $999. That whatever, like let's say they fail to really hit 3.7, it's like a 3.6 gigahertz card. Yeah, I'd make that like $999 with 32 gigabytes. I still think it would sell like crazy. If it beats the 4090, I think they could get away with $1,200 personally. It just depends if they want to do that. You know what I mean? I mean, 9070 XTs are selling for $1,000 right now. I don't know how you could convince me, if I'm a shareholder, why you'd be going that cheap. But then I would take the cut down model that's like 3.4 gigahertz. And I did some scratch math when I did this video. I don't believe I really showed it in the video for time, but the math I did is a 3.4 gigahertz 56 compute unit model would still end up being overall more compute power than a 9070 XT. And with GDDR7 would still be would still have 40% more bandwidth. So it'd be like 20% faster than a 9070 XT, even if it's cut down. That's when I would make $799 in with 16 gigabytes and call it the
9075.
The 9080 XT. So because I think there's a real opportunity here, or maybe even 49. Like screw it. Like give it an MSRP $200 more or $150 more than the 9070 XT. Price it the same as a 5070 Ti, just to slap Nvidia. And I think you could sell a lot of those cards. And with it being 5080 performance for 5070 Ti pricing, just do that. And then maybe at $1,000, the 32 gigabyte model that tries to go for as much performance as possible. And again, what I'm saying too is the other one would probably be like 360 watts, but then the top one 450.
Yeah, and with the way, and the way the current market, I don't know, 16 gigabytes probably works for most of the lineup. Maybe I don't know how much of you would get out of having that have 24 gigabytes. Maybe it would give it some more longevity. But I don't know, based on how NVIDIA segmented, anything below the 5080 in performance probably doesn't need to be paired with more than 16 gigabytes of RAM right now. So sure, yeah, that makes sense to me. I wouldn't hate seeing the 9080 XT with, or whatever we call that, the cut down one. I wouldn't hate seeing that with 24 gigabytes of RAM, but aren't those the mid capacity ones are more expensive, aren't they?
Yeah, because that allows you with clamshelling, putting the chips on both sides to double the capacity. That's what's allowing Nvidia to have a 96 gigabyte RTX 6000. Mm-hmm. That's what would allow AMD to sell 48 gigabyte professional cards. And so I don't know that you'd want to eat into that supply at all. Now, I don't know. From what I've heard, this thing would probably launch at the end of this year. Maybe by then there's going to be tons of everyone. Samsung, Micron, Hynix is going to be making, 3 gigabyte modules. If that's the case, and it's very, very readily available, if it allows them to keep the price a little lower and more competitive, I think 24 gigabytes is enough. Having said that, though, I was thinking about this also today, talking with contributor Carrie Nosugata, and the 45%, right? I saw some games that were like 25% uplift. These would be games that it's mostly just the fact that it's clocked 30% faster. Mm-hmm. It's nothing to do with the increase in bandwidth. That's how you were seeing that performance uplift. But then there was one game, and I'll say what it was. It was Cyberpunk with ray tracing cranked up. Not all the way, but almost all the way in ultra settings. That got supposedly in one area a 45% uplift for 90, whatever it is, the 9080.
The top configured one. Well, the one that was clocked to like 3.7 or something.
Yeah. And it's like, well, how do you get there with like, what is that then? 25 to 30% higher core clocks and only 40% more bandwidth. And I think we've seen some benchmarks recently where if you crank up ray tracing and textures in 4K in Cyberpunk, 16 gigabytes isn't enough. My suspicion is that 45% uplift was the 9070 XT is running the game. Probably not great, actually. I guess be at 30 frames a second, but it was running it. It wasn't like running into those single digits because it was out of VRAM, but it was getting to that point, where it's like barely enough VRAM, and having 32 gigabytes really allowed this to stretch its legs. So that by the way, I want to say that's where I suspect that is coming from. I don't think you should expect somehow 40% more bandwidth to give you 45% more performance unless you're running out of VRAM. But if they can find even, I guess what I'm getting to, if they can find even one scenario too, that's a major AAA game, and it sounds like they can, that is running out of VRAM ever. Like even like if they could find a couple where it's 24 gigabytes, give it 32.
Well, yeah, especially if they could advertise. Well, they probably couldn't use it as the center of their advertising. But if one of the big ones they could talk about was like Cyberpunk, because in their slides, because Cyberpunk gets so much press from Nvidia, that could really help them, I think. Even though I don't think you would get like the big press showings, because Cyberpunk is Nvidia's big star child this year. I mean, for the past 5 years.
Yeah. But I mean, I think wouldn't you agree? Like, I don't know what the price difference would be for not having to clamshell. That would save you some money, but having to use the 3 gigabyte modules. But if it saved you only $50, give it 32 gigabytes so you could compare it to the 5090. Because I bet you could find scenarios where it's only 10-20% behind the 5090, and you could just, I would recommend, if they can, charge $999 for it, so you can go half the price of the 5090, same experience. I mean, that sells itself. And I think there's a lot of people, especially AI people, that would go, oh, I mean, I wanted a 5090, but man, this kind of smells like the same type of a card for really a third the price, probably, considering what 5090s are going for. I guess it depends if this would ever hold MSRP. And wouldn't it make the 5080 Super just look silly if it was?
Yeah, if they could sell this for like 1,000 or 1,200 even, I think that makes it compete in certain ways with both the 5090 and the 5080. Like, it could eat into both of them. So if they could pair it with, I think it would be ideal to pair it with 32 gigabytes of RAM if possible.
Yeah, and I guess the more I think about this, like I've heard they're going to push, I've leaked this, that they're going to push the 5080 Super as hard as they can, maybe to, I think I heard at least 420 watts. And with 24 gigabytes of GDDR7. So at that point, I mean, yeah, I think they're pushing this 15% faster. So it's likely to trade blows with the 5080 Super. And we've had that 30% rule I've heard Nvidia wants to charge $1,200 for the 24 gigabyte 2080 Super, but they may feel like they're forced to do $999. An ace AMD could have up its sleeve is they could say, look, ours is the same price as the 5080 Super, and maybe we're only 5% faster, but we're giving you 32 gigabytes of RAM. You have the same amount of RAM as a 5090. Our drivers don't suck. Also, we're actually probably going to supply this card, as we'll get to in a later story. I think going to 32 gigabytes could have a very symbolic significance. The only thing that I would be concerned about if I was AMD is if we make a 32 gigabyte flagship, everyone's going to expect our flagship to be 32 gigabytes moving forward.
True.
But I find it odd to, I find it likely it would anyways 2 years from now.
I mean, if they go for the performance, if they're going for like what the 6900 XT did with RDNA 2, I would think it's going to have 32 gigabytes anyways. So
yeah. Endless Logins writes in and says, given how the mainstream accepted GPU bottlenecks in VRAM amount, will the RDNA 5 stick with GDDR6 to have all the supply necessary to add more to those cards? No, I think I don't know if I leaked this. I believe the flagship RDNA 4 mega card that got canceled had GDDR7 support. And they want, I've talked about this too, like, and I want to get it out there again. Another reason I really like this information I have, although it's not completely comprehensive, but it was enough for me to leak it for like a 32 gigabyte GDDR7 variant of Navi 48 or update to Navi 48 is for AI reasons alone. I think you'd want to have a GDDR7 model to sell to the AI market with higher capacity. Moving forward, that's definitely going to be true of RDNA 5. There's no, I think, would they have a GDDR6 9, 10,
like 10,
whatever the heck they call their next series?
Or 10. Yeah, it's going to be
I'm still
annoying.
So mad that they went with 9000 because they have to switch their naming scheme again, I think. But who knows? Maybe they'll just add a 1 to the front and like go 1050 XT. Like that might have GDDR6, but I think GDDR7 for everything above that at a minimum. I don't think there's any doubt in my mind on that. And again, when you say supply necessary, Endless Logins, think long term. We're talking about late 2026 at the earliest, probably 2027 for RDNA 5. I mean, well, I don't know. I guess I don't know if it's late. I should just say we're talking about probably 2026 for RDNA 5 at the earliest. GDDR7 will be much more widely available. Okay, now let us move on. Then, oops, should have switched the lights down. Audio listeners have no idea what I am talking about. To story number 3. AMD launches RX 9060 XT. Quoting first from Tom's Hardware and then moving on to editorialization. The Radeon 9060 XT is available in 8GB and 16GB versions, priced at $299 and $349 respectively. The 8GB model is therefore 9% less expensive than what the 7600 XT had, whereas the 16GB model is just 6% more. AMD's positioning the 9060 XT 16GB against the 5060 Ti 8GB, which remember is priced $30 higher, and the Radeon 9060 XT will be available on June 5th, so right around when this comes out. And so, yeah, the 9060 XT was announced at Computex as expected, which you can't say for every graphics card, B770. And it is a mixed bag, at least according to much of the tech press. More on my opinion in a moment. The overall zeitgeist, though, has seemingly lashed on to the facts that the MSRP does look good with the 16GB Radeon price lower than the 5060 8GB and a whole $80 or 20% less than the 5060 Ti 16GB. Of course, everything, especially though with real pricing, will depend on supply. Although when it comes to that, the recent 9080 XT ES leak out of the show confirmed that supply looks good. I put that in there. Also, a 9060 XT's supply leak in that 9080 ES video. Although I have to report that though 9060 XT supply looks good. Unfortunately, about a third of that supply will be 8GB models, with the majority over MSRP. So, much better than Nvidia, but I wouldn't say it's perfect. Anyways, though, when it comes to performance for these cards, that also looks pretty good. AMD's own numbers put the 16 gigabyte variant against the 5060 Ti 8 gigabyte in 1440p, which is to say, around the same performance to 30% faster. We're up to 62% faster in ray tracing, although that's undoubtedly due to the higher VRAM capacity. But I guess in AMD's defense, they are charging less than the 8 gigabyte model from Nvidia. Meanwhile, early benchmarks sent to me show that the 9060 XT trades blows with the 5060 Ti and raster overall. Although note, this is but a part of the picture. At the end of this week, I will be able to comment on the more full picture. Again, like just because I know what some reviewers got doesn't mean I know what everyone got on average. Although I will say some compute benchmarks that are already out there in the public, because I can't out my sources, do back up all of this, which is to say around RX 6800 performance. But anyways, then there is that 8 gigabyte model that everyone in the TechTuber space was complaining about last week. And I have to say that while $299 is okay for an 8 gigabyte card relative to Nvidia, and it must be compared to Nvidia because that is their competition, I must say that AMD did draw some deserved anger for hiding the 8 gigabyte card under the same name. Really, can they not just call it the 9060 like they did last generation to distinguish between these? AMD's chief architect of gaming solutions, Frank Azor, even got baited successfully into saying something silly like it's okay for 1080p. 8 gigabytes is enough for that, and most gamers game at 1080p, and then try to defend that rhetoric on Twitter. And so, look, what do I really think about the 9060 XT at the end of the day? AMD is competing with Nvidia. And so that is what I will compare them to. I don't buy this nonsense I sometimes hear of it's not fair to compare them to Nvidia. It is, because that's their competition. Okay. And if you do that, AMD is selling a 16 gigabyte card for $30 less than Nvidia's 8 gigabyte model. And their 8 gigabyte model just crushes Nvidia's RTX 5060 8 gigabyte outright. And also does so while giving you 16 PCIe lanes. That's very important. So should we say that AMD is dumb for calling the 8 gigabyte model the XT? Yes, but I have to say the kabuki theater for rage clicks that continues, it seems silly to me. The only reason I think they should get any more hate in the future is if we find out 80% of the supply is 8 gigabytes and they try to hide reviews. As long as they're not hiding anything, I don't know. There's always going to be an 8 gigabyte model. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the 9060 XT 8 gigabyte is a small fraction of the supply, but
it's not a non-zero. We'll it's like, because like with the 5060 Ti, I've heard, at least so far, we'll see if they change this, is a very small supply. The 8 gigabyte model is a very small supply. The 5060 Ti, from what I have seen, talking to my sources in retail and and to distributors, the 8 gigabyte model seems like a fourth to a third of the supply. It's not nothing. Now, maybe that's just the initial
that's not
supply.
The worst, but
maybe they stopped production and that's just because they already made them. I don't know. But yeah, I don't like that, I have to admit.
So, I mean, it's more than just them anchoring the price of the 9060 XT to some lower price point by selling this model, but it's not 60%.
Yeah, it's more than being
able
to say we're starting at $299. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, I do think the existence of 8 gigabyte cards still makes sense to an extent. I just wish it was something more like, I don't know, a 9050 that they were selling that still had 8 gigabytes of RAM, and they 9060 and 9060 XT just both had 16 gigabytes of RAM, or the 9060 even had like an 8 gigabyte model or whatever we want to call it. Or hell, even they just sell something like a 7600 8 gigabyte in perpetuity. That would be fine with me. I don't completely disagree with the point that everybody, a lot of people still play in 1080p. Fine. For like a card below $250 or something, I'm fine with an 8 gigabyte card still existing. Just wish, I don't know. I think it's kind of, I don't think this card is weak enough to demand 8 gigabytes of RAM anymore. I think it's going to come into issues.
I mean, it's a 6800. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's gonna run into issues even in 8 gigabytes. Like if you look at Nvidia reviews for the 8 gigabyte cards they've had come out this generation, I think you'll see some of those same issues with the 9060 XT. So yeah, I wish all of those 8 gigabytes were 16 gigabyte models for this card, but in the current landscape, I guess I hope that stays somewhat close to its purported MSRP of $300, because I don't know, that might be an okay option if prices get inflated too much.
Yeah, I would just again, it's like I just feel like they missed a chance here for a clean win. And the biggest thing I would worry about is I guess I'll say this. I'll make the argument for why this may be bad that AMD still has the 8 gigabyte card. Well, it is bad, but why it's extra bad, and not Kabuki Theater to give them a bunch of shit for this. Like, what if what I'm seeing with supply is actually what it's always going to be? For some reason, they're always going to make a third or even a fourth. A fifth is still too much too of the supply be 8 gigabyte models. And because the 9060 XT will probably get great reviews, OEMs will be able to sell you this thing that's not going to perform as well under the same name. Like, and they always plan to do this. It's too soon to say that's what they're going to do yet, though. I'll say that, though. If that's what they end up doing, it's not just stupid, it's slimy. But at a minimum, it's stupid because they clearly were the good guys with the 7600 XT having 16 gigabytes. Well, Nvidia would not give you that for anything close to the same price. And they also delineated the 7600 as a different name. And it's weird to not do that again, gen over gen. And it just, to me, screams like something could be up. But who knows? They're often just stupid. I don't know.
I would say at a certain point, expecting consistency in branding is
not asking too much.
It's not asking too much, but it's a waste of time at this point. Like, they're going to do what they're going to do every time. Like, why is this being called the 9060 XT? Because I think they think it gives them some type of win, or maybe they don't want to release a 9050 this generation for some reason. Like, it might be as simple as that. And last generation, they didn't have that constraint, so they were able to more accurately delineate the two cards that they released with the 7600 and the 7600 XT. And I don't know, I just expecting consistency from AMD and Nvidia from gen to gen.
You give up?
I think, that might be what I'm saying is I give up on that. And if you're not paying attention, you might accidentally buy a thing you didn't want to buy, which is shitty. But pay attention when you're buying stuff, I guess, is my overall piece of advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would say an annoying thing, too, is I could see this leading to a problem where had the 8 gigabyte model not existed, you might get more base model like 9060 XT 16 gigabytes that would force the 9060 XT price down a little bit. Or maybe you would have more of that option. Just trying to think like, well, in a perfect world, if these were all 16 gigabytes, maybe that cheaper heatsink that they throw onto all the 8 gigabyte models, maybe that would also go into 16 gigabyte models more often.
And so it's not really the same thing because they didn't push it as hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, that's what they'll argue. But yeah. So yeah, I'm of two minds about it. On the one hand, it's like, guys, AMD is launching a 16 gigabyte card for less than NVIDIA's 8 gigabyte card that has roughly the same performance. And their 8 gigabyte card is the same price as NVIDIA's cut down variant with 8 gigabytes that has half the PCIe lanes, which will be very important long term in being able to switch textures out quickly because it's going to have to do that constantly. That is a big deal that NVIDIA skimped on that and AMD didn't. From that perspective, don't hate on that. It would be stupid to call AMD evil or slimy or the 60XT is the worst thing ever. Shut up. It is not that bad. Enough with the drama queen stuff. Having said that, it should be the 9068 or even 9050, frankly, XT 8 gigabyte. We should all admit that and try to make it very clear. And I don't think there's like a need to double down on AMD being shady unless they hide the 8 gigabyte model. If they do that, then give them the same treatment as NVIDIA.
Yeah, if we on like review day or release day, like see
or a week after that, like they're still
96, 9060 XT boxes that don't very clearly delineate what those are, because that has happened in the past.
Especially with NVIDIA, yeah.
We can complain about that.
Alrighty, let us now move on to a sponsor you might want to know about if you want to buy a 9060 XT. That is Micro Center. Micro Center is a sponsor of this podcast, and they are opening up a new store in Santa Clara. It is officially open. Check out the link below for deals exclusive to this location, including 20% off laptops, desktops, and monitors until June 15th. Also starting June 2nd, so that would be by the time this podcast goes live, they're having their laptop sales event. Check the link in the description for that. And they have a ton of deals on that right now. They also now have a firm available at Micro Center. So whether you're shopping online or in store, a firm allows you to buy now and play later with flexible plans that fit your budget. With all Micro Center's unbeatable deals, they're telling me to tell you this, but sure. Now is the perfect time to upgrade your system or even get the PC out of your dreams, which they tell me to tell you it's the perfect time. Or they don't tell me to tell you. There's not a gun up to my head. They want me to tell you now is the perfect time. It is. I mean, I think it is. If you can get CPUs are wildly good deals right now. I mean, Ultra 7s are now $299 as well. So now is a great time to upgrade. It's not just because it's in the ad read. I agree. So I would definitely check out these links below to support us and to support the person supporting, the sponsor supporting us, Micro Center. And then I will also jump in here and pivot away from this ad one more time to something I wanted to say that mid-sentence I am forgetting what it was. So instead of a transition, we'll do Deadeye writes in and says, "Seeing," like you're like, wait, where's this going? Tom?
Where is this going? And Tom is slowly spinning out.
I had a way I was gonna link. Buy now is now's a good. Oh, okay. Here we go. I leave it in, Gerard. Who cares? So
the longer the segue, the better.
I forgot how I was going to do the segue. But the next thing I was going to bring up, though, is when it comes to buying now, I just want to be clear again. This will come out. I think reviews may be live from someplace, but I think this will be before the actual release date. If you're looking to get a 9060 XT, this perfectly dovetails with Micro Center because from what I'm hearing, Micro Center is going to have a ton of supply. And then Newegg will have a decent amount of supply. And places like Best Buy will have maybe online only. Amazon will have some supply. Unfortunately, if you want to support your local mom and pop store, call them. Don't, I might be wrong.
Yeah.
Call them and check. But it sounds like most of the supply is going to Micro Center and Newegg. So unless you have a Micro Center, I would really check the online storefronts, maybe B&H Photography as well, more so than try to go into a store and get these. And that, from what I can see, I don't know the exact number. It seems like a third at most of the supply is MSRP. Probably actually 10% to 20% is MSRP. So there's a lot of models above MSRP. I've seen plenty of 16 gigabyte, plenty of 8 gigabyte models that are $340, plenty of 16 gigabyte models, so $10 less than the MSRP of the 16. Plenty of 16 gigabyte models that are $400 to $450. I know that seems like a ripoff, but remember, it's all relative. Nvidia is selling their 5060 Ti's for over $500 sometimes, so it is what it is. But I've been told that these prices should go down over time, AMD thinks, as they supply more. And there's just a lot of above MSRP models right now because Nvidia is not supplying the market. But as AMD continues to supply them, they think more of the MSRP models will trickle in here more consistently compared to the 9070 XT, which is still commanding way above MSRP. So there will be MSRP models. Try to get them, including at Micro Center. But if you don't get them, don't buy a $500 model, if there is one. That's all I'm saying. All right. We will now get to Deadeye. Seeing Navi 44 having 16 PCIe 5.0 lanes, maybe the 8 gigabyte version wouldn't even be as bad as the 5060 or 4060 before it. Having 4 times PCIe lanes compared to the 4060 or 2 times the PCIe bandwidth of the 5060 could help in VRAM situations a lot. But I have to also wonder, do you think AMD would bring back some sort of caching scheme like they had with high bandwidth cache controllers or HBCC with their Vega cards? I think that might also help solve 8 gigabyte VRAM problems before NVIDIA manages to twist journalists to ignoring it. Also, it'd be great for AMD mobile products. Still, next gen, they better not be making 60 class cards with 8 gigabytes ever. AMD, probably not. NVIDIA, well, we'll see. High bandwidth cache was awesome. This was something, for those who don't know, Vega 5664 and Radeon 7 had, where you could use system memory as a low latency cache to kind of act like an extension of more VRAM. I will say, though, this isn't a silver bullet. In the testing I saw, it allowed the Vega 64 to almost act like it had 11 or 12 gigabytes of VRAM. Like, I think a 1080 Ti going to 12 gigabytes of VRAM, so it's over its 11 gigabyte buffer, was worse than like Vega 64 at 12 gigabytes. But once you got to 16, it started hitching a lot. So it's like, it's not like, even though it said it cached 8 gigabytes, it was acting like a 16 gigabyte card in most games. It wasn't the same thing. It helped a lot, but it's not the same thing. And therefore, would I love to see HBCC come back? Yeah, that's really cool. That could also be a really good marketing ploy by AMD. Like, oh, our 9080 XT will outlast the 5080 because we know it will run out of VRAM later. I think that could be a really interesting thing comparable to DLSS, where they're like, this is a real thing where we have like this feature in the die they can even say it uses AI somehow that Nvidia doesn't have.
High AI cache controller.
AI cache controller. There you go. AICC. There you go. But I have to say that, guys, I think this keeps coming up. Adding 4 gigabytes of RAM, depending on what it is like $15 to $30. And that's what is more marketable on a box? 32 versus 24 gigabytes on Nvidia, or 24 with high bandwidth cache, whatever that means. I just think AMD could maybe make up for not having to pay more for marketing to just put $20 more of RAM on a card. Like, and they should do that.
Especially a feature that, I don't know, they didn't seem to be able to advertise it that well the first time around, so I don't know why it would succeed this time. I'll not saying having HBCC or something similar come back wouldn't be cool, but it's not equivalent to just having more RAM.
No, it's not the exact same thing. And if you just have to spend $20 per card to be able to market more RAM on HBox, it's a real thing, and it is easier to market. If I'm an AMD, I'm like, as long as there's not supply constraints, let's just do that. It actually makes it better, and it's also easier to market. That's a double win. Why would we not just do that? All right. Speaking of a double win for marketing, let us move on to story number 4. AMD announces FSR Redstone. Quoting here from PC Gamer before the editorialization, AMD just gave us our first look at a significant update to FSR, codenamed Redstone. The new update is due to arrive in the second half of this year and looks like something of a catch-up phase to counter NVIDIA's recent efforts with DLSS 4. Top of the list is neural radiance caching, which AMD says continually learns how light bounces in a scene to predict and store indirect lighting. That's interesting. FSR 4 Redstone will also feature machine learning enhanced ray regeneration, which it says is capable of regenerating inaccurate ray traced pixels for higher quality. And a new machine learning model will be added to its frame generation tech, which apparently uses temporal and spatial awareness to generate frames. Anyways, AMD Redstone is a weird announcement, though. It is presented as a big deal, but is it really? AMD announced 3 main new technologies: neural radiance caching, ray regeneration, and learning to improve with machine learning their frame generation. However, it's unclear if it is to augment or fully replace the current fluid frame system. So look, here's the thing. For now, Redstone isn't really a promise that AMD will catch up to DLSS 4 in the immediately short term, and nothing extra specific is promised in terms of things you can quantify. Just better, we don't know how much better. But in my opinion, I actually think Redstone feels like a more than just a snappy rebranding for FSR efforts. With FSR 3 and 3.1, AMD was crazy vague about what they would do. Forget even saying what the performance uplift will be. They didn't even tell you how new FSRs would be better. They just vaguely claimed it would be. And they didn't really do anything to demonstrate they were even attempting to hit DLSS quality anytime soon. But with Redstone, to me, something feels different. AMD isn't focusing on how free or open FSR 4 is as a marketing reason that you should like it more than DLSS, even if it's not as good. They're instead focusing on very specific new technologies that they believe can make them beat NVIDIA, and that should scare GeForce, at least if they even know this is happening, if they even glance at gaming news anymore. Furthermore, AMD also announced that FSR 4 will be available in 60 titles by June 5th. I believe that's doubling their previous announcement just months ago. Also demonstrating that FSR 4 is innovating at a much more aggressive pace now. So that's my takeaway from this is I've seen some people say, well, this is just still vague statements. And it's like, yeah, but before they didn't even tell you how FSR 3.1 would be better. Now they're telling you how they're going to do it. They're making it sound like they want to beat, not kind of catch up in a free and open way that's good for gamers.
Mm-hmm.
And they've also doubled the support in a few months, whereas before that took forever. So to me, Redstone's a big deal because, again, it might be a vibes thing, but the vibe is they're competing much harder now.
Yeah, I especially think given that they're actually getting FSR4 into a lot of titles is a big deal, because that's where I think AMD at this point really is lacking. I mean, all these machine learning features that they're claiming they're going to be up to snuff with NVIDIA, with Redstone, great, cool, but I think a lot of them, the hardware is still not up to the point that it needs to be. Like they're doing their form of ray regeneration, which is hard, very hard to run on GPUs as far as I can tell right now. There's the machine learning frame generation, which, you know, people still call it fake frames. I still am pretty much in agreement with that. So cool. I just, it's good that they're getting to parity with, or they're claiming to be at parity with NVIDIA. And I guess the Redstone thing seems like it might be a shift for them, where it's like, Redstone, this is our new 1.0. We've actually caught up with DLSS. Now we're going to slowly throw off the FSR branding. That's what it seems like to me. And to do that, you know, we announce all of our machine learning things we also have at this point.
Mm-hmm. So, again, I don't know that I have much else to say. I mean, the only thing that really caught me when I was watching this live for the announcement video that I put out, I think in the middle of the night, was just, oh, they're not just saying FSR 5 will come out someday. They're saying, here's specific ways we're going to have higher image quality with FSR 4 this year. That's a big deal. I guess I will add this.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Yeah.
I didn't mention this in the write-up. A source of mine, the one that told me about these 9080, 9090 XT engineering samples, there's supposedly some higher quality FSR being tested on them in some areas. Mm-hmm. So what that tells me too is they also don't want to launch the high-end RDNA 4 until Redstone is ready. And I think that's smart.
Actually put RDNA 4 high-end out, and then at the same time have your new software suite instead of the usual path of announce it as halfway through the generation the software comes out. I'd be a fan of that.
Yeah. And
please stop doing that, AMD.
Yeah, and it's like, who knows? By then, maybe they could have like 100 games that support FSR 4 and a new edition of FSR 4 that has a bunch of reviews saying it's trading blows with DLSS 4. And they're like, boom, 32 gigabyte, $1,000 card. Get bent, NVIDIA. All right. Speaking of telling NVIDIA to get bent, let us now move on to story number 5. NVIDIA manipulates the RTX 5060 reviews, threatens tech tubers, and cuts RTX 50 production. Wins all around for gamers, people. So quote in here from Jay's 2 cents in a pre-review video. If you guys have not watched the Steve's videos, specifically regarding the 5060, this has been one of the most non-transparent, manipulative, and just downright dirty practice as when it comes to reviewing the 5060 in GPU history. Even Gamers Nexus has experienced direct attempts, allegedly, at manipulation and almost extortion in a way of how they have to do their content if they want to be part of NVIDIA's NVIDIA circuit, if you will. And then this is him after the 5060 launches in his review video. This is probably the latest I've ever been to a review because this is probably the longest it's ever taken to actually get the graphics card I needed for the review because, as you guys know, NVIDIA doesn't want independent reviewers with the 5060. They want shills. This is the battle for the bottom, if you will. Oh my God, if you thought the 50 Ti was terrible, by the way, this card, it really is too little too late for 2025. And therefore, if it's 2025, it's not enough for the future. The fact is that we know 8 gigabyte cards are just simply not enough, and there's a reason why the 5060 Ti reviews only came with 16 gigabyte variants. So, yep, oh boy, did NVIDIA step in it with the 5060 launch. The card was just a plain bad idea, even with a $300 MSRP, despite, by the way, upgrading also from GDDR6 in the 4060 to GDDR7 in the 5060. It doesn't fix the lack of VRAM for any form of longevity. And despite a large CUDA core uplift as well, It also lacks the compute to compete. Worse yet, Nvidia tried to hide their card's embarrassing performance by pressuring reviewers, not providing pre-launch drivers unless the reviewer agreed to test Nvidia's list of games and only them. By the way, I believe part of this testing was make sure you compare the 4060 with these settings in 4K in only these games, which is hilarious because we know, I have plenty of games where 1440p 8 gigabytes doesn't work at medium anymore. Oh, and of course, you also had to talk about multi-frame generation constantly. This resulted in a predictable PR disaster, but NVIDIA had similar in the past. Will people really remember this one, though? And by the way, the Blackwell PR disaster train continues with rumors that Blackwell supply has been cut. The current information mentions a 20 to 30% lower supply to the Chinese market comparing May to June. This could be connected to the ramp-up of GB300, a Blackwell Ultra, a refresh of NVIDIA's data center AI behemoth. So yeah, who cares about gaming when you've got AI factories to sell to? Oh, and Singapore. Which I will reference a tweet I put out laughing at someone who said NVIDIA was taking tons of gaming market share. And I pointed out that right when China sales of NVIDIA went flat, Singapore shot up. Whoa, look at all those gaming sales. Idiots.
There is a Fortnite boom in Singapore.
There is a Fortnite boom in Singapore. Everyone needs 1059s. Some real idiots. I'm sorry, idiots on Twitter acting like NVIDIA's gaming market share is going crazy right now when it's obvious that this is just 5090s being smuggled into China as always. I guess the final thing I'll say too is on the note of cutting production, why would you cut production on cards you can't make enough of and then launch a 5080 Super, a new card? I think to counter a 9080 XT. Just again, adding that. But anyways, what do you think about all of the fun with NVIDIA?
Not too much that other people haven't already said. Don't do what they did and try to do apples to oranges comparisons of fake frames to real frames in your quote unquote reviews. But I suppose NVIDIA just outright trying to buy review, or not even buy, I can't say buy, extort reviews out of independent media shouldn't come as a surprise. It was bound to happen at some point. But yeah, I don't think buy the 5060 unless it is below $300. Like that's where I'm at with 8 gigabytes. I think having 8 gigabyte cards is of value, but not for these prices.
It's the same reason we would say it's okay if there's a $150 years ago, not now even years ago, a $150 or $200 or less 4 gigabyte card, as long as you need something to anchor the bottom of the market, so you're not selling $300 1650s like happened for like a bit ago. But that's not what this is. That would be like back then saying we're happy for a 2 gigabyte card. I mean, yeah, I guess you can boot at most games, but it's not enough.
Yeah. So 8 gigabytes not enough, and it's very slimy that NVIDIA decided to try to hide the deficiencies of their card by screwing over reviewers.
I guess what I'll say too, and this isn't because I'm secretly responding, Tom secretly is referencing this tech tuber. No, I have no one in mind when I say this, but I want to just put this out there openly. I would just challenge tech tubers and big review sites. Please don't feel the need to be fake, fair, and balanced and then attack AMD randomly really hard because NVIDIA's pissed you off to be able to claim you're not an AMD fanboy. They're always going to... I've seen every tech tuber. Obviously, they've accused us of being fanboys. I don't know what they call Gamers Nexus, but I've seen them call him AMD biased. I've seen them call AMD Unboxed for hard. Very creative name, by the way, fanboys. AMD Unboxed for Hardware Unboxed. And I'm not talking to any of these tech tubers specifically here, but it's like almost all of the biggest sites, of course, besides Digital Foundry, that do big reviews. Everyone gets accused of being AMD biased because of the shit they have to put up with NVIDIA. And I want to challenge reviewers, don't be extra harsh on some AMD or Intel thing, unless it's bad, just to seem fair and balanced. If NVIDIA's acting shitty, no one's going to take you seriously. That they're acting shitty if you do the opposite of a puff piece against AMD, just so you can say, we gave it to AMD. If AMD does something bad, do that. But I feel like, again, the kabuki theater thing I say, there's been some of this where it's like we have to pretend we hate Intel or AMD or something so every now and then so they don't think we just hate on Nvidia. If Nvidia is being the biggest asshole, it needs to be obvious they're being the biggest asshole or nothing's going to change. So I think there's some of this is for theater and for clickbaits out there, for like hating on Nvidia to a degree. It keeps getting drawn out, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. Don't try to balance all of your anti-Nvidia videos by doing more anti-Intel and AMD videos unless they really deserve it. I'm challenging you. When you do that, no one takes your opinion of Nvidia seriously, and they're extorting Gamers Nexus. This should land.
The 9060 XT, for example, unless it turns out when reviews come out this week that AMD is trying to do some slimy crap with their reviews, there's no reason to respond just as negatively to
an 8 gigabyte thing from
the
them.
5060. Yeah.
AI generated fish writes in and says, Tom, how much do you think the weakness of the 5060 is a result of servicing the laptop market? Laptop 5060 and 5070s are both the 206 dies, both 8 gigabytes, and they're the heart of the laptop dedicated graphics market in terms of volume. My suspicion with Lovelace was that it had poor desktop cards, and then they led to super refreshes, but there was never a super series in laptop because they could get away with it in laptop, and that's why they even had bad desktop cards. I hope these die and rot on shelves, but laptop buyers seem more apt to drink the Nvidia Kool-Aid. I just think they feel like they have no choice. Like, I've heard that there may be some. This is also probably a leak thing that I said in the video about the 9080 XT that probably flies under the radar, but everyone listen here. I did say that I heard there may be a refresh of AMD laptop cards later this year. So AMD is going to hopefully offer an alternative to Nvidia eventually this year in laptops. But until later this year, I don't think people are buying Nvidia because they want it. AMD's not in the laptop market.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a pretty big stagnation in laptop GPUs, and I think that's part of it.
Yeah, and so my hope would be later this year, AMD takes just do 32 gigabytes on desktop, but especially if it uses 3 nanometer, they can absolutely fit this thing into reasonable sized 14-inch laptops. Make a 24 gigabyte like 9090 MXT that matches, and it should, the 5090 laptop edition. I hope they do that, and I hope they start bringing out 32 compute unit 8-core more reasonably priced Strix Halo models. And who knows? I mean, they could do a lot with the 9060 XT and the 9070 XT in laptop as well if they wanted to. I hope they do that later this year because the market's primed for some more competition there. Now, as to the question about is the 5060 is because of laptop? Yeah, I mean, I've covered that. They think sticking to 128-bit allows them to put a card that should probably have a bit bigger die and more memory modules into a smaller form factor that has less memory modules in laptop, where people tend to accept it. But I feel like a lot of the tend to accept it is because they have no alternatives, not because everyone's like, yes, they fit an 8 gigabyte card into a thin and light. It's like, who gives a shit? That's
more
been there
8
forever.
Gigs.
Yeah. So I don't think that's what it is. And I would buy Nvidia's argument as making more sense if they would give you 12 gigabytes with the 5060 laptop, but they're not. Jensen Wang, more than 4 million Blackwell GPUs have been sold, writes in and says, IRC, lots of studios and companies had software development in Russia due to lower costs and plenty of people to work on that software there. They only got out, though, of course, towards the end of 2022 in October, once added Lovelace drivers would have been done. Is it possible that the issues that we've seen rebuilding their teams and process have just not got it close to right? I think what he's getting at here is like, this is true. Intel had big driver teams in Russia. Russia invades Ukraine. There goes a lot of the software development. That's what Intel blamed a lot of their software issues with Alchemist on. Although everyone had to deal with that a little bit. Intel didn't have the issues you did, but it did affect them. And I know people at Intel that talked about this, like they had team members that Intel actually, to their credit, was helping get out of that country. Good Intel for that.
More important than anything else we're talking about at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Now, is this something that affected NVIDIA? And NVIDIA got them out later, and this is why Blackwell driver development. I reached out to someone at NVIDIA today before we started recording. Of course, the person says, look, I don't know every team at NVIDIA. I don't know how many. We had, not now probably, had software developers in like every country in 2022. but they don't think it affected Nvidia as much as Intel. So no, I don't think that's what's going on with Blackwell. I think it's because they took their eye off the ball. All right. Now, speaking of taking your eye off of a ball, I don't know if that works.
This piece of content is brought to you by the fans that support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And it does need supporting. From personal attacks from tech elites that get mad when we tell you that they are lying to gamers and their own shareholders, to legal attacks from mega corporations that cost the team time and money. This is expensive and often very stressful work. And it's work that doesn't depend on access journalism, nor depend on NDAs or agreements that would sanitize our opinions and hold us back. No, nothing holds us back, and we are independently funded, and we use said funding to do things like pay professional renderers to show you products before they come out so that the sources that provided us the original pictures don't get in trouble. Or we also create bonus content like Die Shrinks, where you have videos and interviews coming out multiple times a month exclusively to reward our patrons with the extra content that we know they would like to see, whether it's inside scoops or more in-depth conversation and stuff that we just know wouldn't profit if we put it out publicly, but it doesn't need to profit for our fans on Patreon because it is self-funded. And so if you want any of that bonus content, or you want to support the independent journalism of Moore's Law is Dead, or honestly, if you just want to support me, Dan, Gerard, Carbon Cry, or Jesse and Maurice so that we have food on the table every day, consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. And to those that already support us there, I'll see you on the Discord.
I don't know if that
Story
works.
number 6, Nvidia gaming laptop APU confirmed with pictures, TDP, and release date targets. Quoting from Notebook Check, Nvidia was expected to launch its first ever consumer-grade laptop CPUs at Computex, according to some rumors. Not my rumors. Well, we did get the Nvidia GB10-powered MSI C931 and the Lenovo ThinkStation PGX, better name. They're tailor-made for AI applications and not really day-to-day use, and they don't have a screen and a keyboard attached to them. However, Moore's Law is Dead has now given us our first look at Nvidia's laptop APU, and it's looking pretty powerful. Attached images shared with Wendell from Level 1 Text show an engineering sample of Nvidia's upcoming silicon surrounded by what looks like 8 memory modules. This hints at a Strix Halo-like configuration with a powerful onboard iGPU that can take advantage of blazing fast LPDDR, most likely LPDDR5X. It is LPDDR5X, Notebook Check. RAM. The above sample has a TDP of 80 to 120 watts, although that figure could get revised in the future. So, yep. As reported by Notebook Check on what we reported in the last episode of BS with Wendell from Level 1 Text, we also provided new info on Nvidia's laptop APU project that included a picture. You see, as of today, the only products announced using these new modular APU things. So this is something I also leaked months ago. It's like that Digits, which is now called Project Spark, that is like a Threadripper like Skunkworks project. Like Threadripper was a Skunkworks project of Epic, where they're like, oh, if we just remove these components, we can make an awesome HEDT system that's cheaper than Intel. They have this I've been told by people at Nvidia, this modular family of like compute GPU tiles and CPU tiles they can mix and match for a whole APU family for laptops. Digit/Spark was just like a thing they threw together. Oh, we can make an AI mini PC. And not seeing this announced, even at Computex by now, I've been wondering, like, is the APU family canceled? The answer is no. Like I said, I put out pictures of it. I have more details. What seems to be going on here, and this was insight given by Wendell at Level 1 Text during the episode. I'm glad I shared this with him. He's like, even if he basically said, for a year now, I've had a, Ampere ARM system where I can put an NVIDIA GPU in a PCIe slot, and they runs pretty much all games well, like on Steam, in Linux. And he's like, okay, so clearly ARM and NVIDIA works right now. What's going on here? He's like, clearly they've basically perfected this. His suspicion is that they basically have the laptop APU family done. And I've shared pictures of laptops being tested now that I'm told are supposed to launch at the end of this year, if not early next year, at CES then probably. But maybe they just said, why would we sell these APUs in $1,200 to $100 to $2,000 laptops, which I kind of heard is what they were going to target, when we can sell $3,000 AI mini PCs. So yeah, I mean,
Fair.
AMD and Intel should be ready for more competition, but as long as the AI bubble continues, I think this is what they're going to do with them.
I mean, we've talked about that before. Like, if I guess Nvidia is going to just let it ride, and I understand why they are if they can just sell these mini PCs to professionals for way more money than what gamers or general PC users would ever get. Although I do really want to see how these perform on Windows, or Linux for gaming.
Yeah, and so I don't have much else to say. I mean, I'm guessing you were too. Like, were you thinking, okay, is this thing canceled? Like, where are these APUs for a couple months now?
Yeah, or it's like a DG1 type situation. Or
some people thought they might be announced at CES. I mean,
yeah, I mean, clearly something's going on in the background. I mean, I was beginning to wonder if like the first generation of them wasn't going to come out or something, because I don't think the project's canceled. I could see the first line of them being canceled or sidelined.
But yeah, and I thought, is it because of ARM on Windows? And Windows like, no, I mean, they basically have it working. It's because of AI on bank accounts where, well, again, and it's cheaper. You don't have to put a keyboard, a battery, a monitor. All you need is the stupid mini PC that we spray painted gold, so it looks like it should be expensive. And apparently, you can sell for $3,000. You can sell 5070 for $3,000. So as long as Nvidia can do that, and I did see a comment in the YouTube comments section for the Wendell episode that said, "Interesting insight from you guys." So if I'm reading this right, if Nvidia announces AI, their new laptops, we should be sure that the AI bubble is about to pop. And I'm like, I don't know if I would say that exactly, but if you're an investor, it could be an early signal. If they're like, ooh, we're about to rush into laptop, that means they think they're not going to be able to sell them in mini PCs for that much longer. So I don't know. I did think that was an interesting thing someone noticed from what we were saying. All right. Let us now move on to something else that it sounds like it might be canceled, although the other one wasn't, so the segue doesn't work. With story number 7, Xbox handheld development has reportedly been sidelined, quoting from Windows Central before the write-up. Microsoft is still deeply investing in developing its own Xbox gaming handheld technology in the future. Remember, this website's called Windows Central, so there's a bit of a bias here. But it was announced internally today that the priorities are moving more deeply towards third-party OEM handhelds in the interim. Project Keenan is the codename of Microsoft's partner Xbox handheld with Asus. We understand that Keenan is still targeting a launch later this year. The hardware side is essentially finished. According to our sources, tentatively, we believe this device to be among the first using the AMD Z2 Extreme. What we are still, is that already out? But we are still working on solid confirmation for that. Anyways, though, speaking of gaming APUs handhelds, we know Sony is planning one. We know Nintendo is launching one this week. And that also Valve is making their move on the software side at the same time. And of course, Xbox was also considering making a handheld. Well, the possibility of an Xbox handheld is supposedly not dead. For now, Microsoft chose to work with Asus on an Xbox branded product running Windows 11. Project Keenan, the new Asus handle, might use all of this stuff, but we are not sure about the exact hardware. So we have pictures of it. Photo from the FCC, and it just seems like basically they're moving towards better supporting Windows handhelds that compete with the Steam Deck instead of launching their own closed software one that only runs Xbox games or something somehow. And look, why would this make any sense unless it runs Windows? Why would you compete with Lenovo and Asus ROG? And now we'll get to in a second, the MSI Claw is going to run AMD APUs. Why would you do this? Why would you put an Xbox? Why would you put a turd brand on a product that's picking up steam? I'm sorry, Xbox is a turd brand. Their sales are just gone. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, I really don't in general get why Xbox would be thinking about doing more dedicated hardware right now. I think as time goes on, just converting it more and more into a brand like they have been makes the most sense. And, you know, having an Asus partnership, even where this is like an Xbox approved handheld or something like that, maybe that works.
Could mean that you'll have this minimum level of performance.
But yeah, I don't get what the purpose of Microsoft putting out another Zune or whatever is. Like that's kind of what this type of stuff feels like to me right now. And the handheld space is getting more and more competitive, especially if Sony is trying to throw their hat in the ring again. I just don't see where Xbox branded handheld really works, or a dedicated Xbox handheld
again, unless it can
works
also run
environment.
full Windows.
Sure, but then that's kind of just a different thing than a variant on what already exists.
Which, who knows? Maybe what happened in the background is they're like, well, this has to run full Windows, and then they thought, what are we launching? Aren't we just launching the ROG Ally 2 or whatever next to the ROG Ally 2?
Yeah.
Like, why are we launching this? You know, if this is based on the Z2 Extreme, then other competitors will have this exact same thing. And then maybe the conversation went, oh, but if we do make it a closed off handheld, it won't sell. And I'm sorry, I want to say this, right? And we're about to get to this in the next story. Right now, Valve is knocking on Microsoft's gaming PC door. They are expanding SteamOS. They're expanding. I've seen a lot of stuff from friend of the show, Wendell at Level 1 Techs, and other places like the Fox. Yeah, I've seen a lot of him recently, also friend of the show, like talking about how they've tested SteamOS just on laptops, like Strix laptops. And it's like a way better and higher performing experience. If you're Microsoft, you're like, right now we have a competitor knocking at our door with the most popular gaming storefront that's like slit our throat 10 times when it comes to how many times games for Windows Live, the games for Microsoft Store, failure, Origin failure. And now they're marching into having a full operating system that doesn't just run on a handheld, runs on laptops. Is our answer really going to be, you can't run Windows? So why would we launch this? We need to make sure gaming on Windows 11 is a better experience than SteamOS, not even letting you game on Windows 11, so developers stop supporting Windows 11 for gaming as much. Because, I mean, that could happen. You could have a situation where developers go, hey, this percent of people are on SteamOS anyways. Like, it's turning into a situation where, like, yeah, we're going to launch our game on Windows, but, like, we see the writing on the wall where we shouldn't put more effort into that than we do into these other options.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if you have any more thoughts on this, but.
No, I mean, I think moving forward with a partnership with Asus, sure, maybe that works, but this dedicated hardware thing, I don't know, Microsoft, it might be time to stop with it, even though I know we're probably getting another Xbox at some point.
Well, again, it's like, and I know there's going to be people that call me a hater again for saying this. Guys, they just raised prices on Xbox while PlayStation dropped their prices. Is that pro-consumer? Would it be pro-consumer to, instead of focusing on bringing Windows to Xbox, bringing Xbox to handhelds that can't run Windows? I don't see how this is pro-consumer and how this would do well. I don't know. I just never really got the idea of this unless it was like a $100 ARM device that streams games. Otherwise,
Sure.
I don't get what this is, because like, you've already got successful handhelds out there. Like, they did it. They did the groundwork for you. Why are you competing with them?
Yeah, it seems redundant.
Haibu writes in, could or would Microsoft ever give PC gamers access to whatever software that allows their consoles to play Xbox 360 and Xbox games so gamers can legally play their old library on a PC? I don't know. My gut would be not anytime soon, but honestly, what a marketing win if they did that.
Yeah, if they got everything running on
like,
PC,
make the Xbox
cool.
app allow you to download your Xbox 360 and Xbox One games that you bought and run. Like, as long as if you could get that working, whoa, that's a compelling argument for gaming on Windows instead of Steam.
Oh yeah.
Like, again, it's like, I'm just so annoyed anytime I see Microsoft work on pulling things away from PC instead of taking things that worked on Xbox and making Windows better, because Windows is their main product. And I am a PC gamer first and foremost. And so I think anyone who calls themselves a PC gamer listening to this should be pissed anytime Microsoft funds a product that isn't making Windows better.
Yeah, Microsoft, you already have a gaming platform. Please make it better.
Yes. They seem to keep forgetting that. But let's see here. Let us now move on to story number 8. Valve's huge Steam Deck's update, as we've already said, is now ready for everyone, including rival AMD Handhelds. Quoting here from The Verge, Valve has been building up to this for months. First in preview, then in beta, and now finally in a full stable release, a new version of SteamOS that brings brand new features to the Steam Deck and also supports third-party handhelds like Lenovo's Legion Go and the Asus ROG Ally series. SteamOS 3.7.8 is the first stable release to add official support for these products, and the first to offer an official recovery image as well that lets you install SteamOS on other handhelds as well. Let's see. So, yeah, well, Microsoft is set to copy Valve's handheld strategy by partnering with OEMs. Valve has now finally released an official install image of SteamOS. You can use it on any device powered by an AMD APU, though, of course, with no guarantees unless the device is a approved powered by SteamOS device. This just continues and confirms the course Valve has charted earlier this year. It will be interesting to see what ROG Ally can do with SteamOS, and of course, when it launches, how Project Keenan will perform with its gaming-optimized Windows 11 and with SteamOS. Again, make it gaming at Windows 11. Don't put Xbox OS on a handheld. Because, and this is exciting too, because again, I've seen people testing Strix Halo, and it works great apparently with SteamOS. Yeah. I don't know. This is what I want to see, man. This is exciting to me. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm just excited to see SteamOS get more widespread adoption. I think some competing OS to Microsoft or to Windows is needed, and I hope this eventually gets adopted and makes its way into, desktops even, because I don't know, Windows and Microsoft, they feel like they don't care about the gaming side of Windows a lot of the time.
No, only when they Valve puts a gun up to their head and makes them care about it. And I hope they keep doing that, because I want stuff like this. Stuff like this forces Microsoft to make Windows 11 work better, not to try to make another handheld device that you have to buy in addition to your handheld that you already own, which is what Microsoft likes to do, make you try to buy the same thing 3 times. That's their whole business model, isn't it now, with their 365 crap? This type of stuff makes them make their current products that you already own better, doesn't make you have to buy the same thing again. And so I hope this continues. Techno writes in and says, could Bumblebee, or a variant of it, for those who don't remember, this is the TSMC N4C, so cheap 4 nanometer, I think, if I remember right, 2028 product that I believe uses, I forgot which variants of whatever architectures it used. I think it was at Navi 3C. I think it was 3C. So this is something that I believe was going to have 4 RDNA 4 or 5 compute units and 6 cores total, but it's 2 low power, 2 C, 2 full cores, or not full, standard classic cores. He says, could this be used as a Steam Deck 2 Lite for sub $250 handhelds to compete where the Switch 2 won't? Because it has 2 work groups of RDNA 4. We've clocked at 3 gigahertz, which would be... He's basically saying, too, if you think about the power consumption, could they get this under 10 watts, too? And he's kind of lists the specs, maybe you could get the storage to 0.5 terabyte. You might be able to really get into that. Yeah, it's something that I wish someone would do. I would be concerned that by the time this comes out, I don't know the die size. My memory was, me and Carrie and Carbon Cry thought it would be 80 to 120 millimeter square. But I don't know. I would be concerned if that's really fast enough. I guess that would be, if it was RDNA 5 and 4 compute units. I'm not saying it will be, but let's say they pulled that off. I think you'd be looking at something with Steam Deck GPU performance, but significantly better CPU. I guess if you made that $200 and it was tiny, like a PSP Go, that might be cool. It could run the same games the Steam Deck does for cheaper, and you could fit it in your pocket. Maybe. I just think that would probably cost $400.
Yeah. Just 250 doesn't seem like they would sell it for 250. And I think Steam or Valve will probably continue to focus on just doing one design at a time. So I think Valve at least is going to do something like just another $400, $500 model of the Steam Deck 2, or with parts that they can get for the Steam Deck 2.
True.
And I don't know. It's kind of interesting, cool, a really, really light handheld like that, but I would rather see the GPU stay or get a little stronger in the CPU, be the one that stays stagnant for the time being, because this isn't going to be a high refresh rate thing. I don't know, with a slightly weaker, roughly the same as the Steam Deck, I'm just worried it wouldn't be able to run games in the future.
Yeah, like what I would want to see in the Steam Deck too, I don't know exactly like where they would think they need to get it, but I think it would be cool if they had something like, I don't know, 4 Zen 6 cores plus 4 low power cores. And then, something like 16 RDNA 5 compute units or something. Like that would give you something that like quadruple performance and actually hold 120, crush the Steam Deck. Not Steam Deck. I always do this. Crush the Switch 2 in performance. And then maybe what they would do is they would disable all 4 classic cores and then cut down the GPU. And low power cores use like less than a watt. So who knows? Maybe they could give you something that's less than 10 watts and compact. And they're like, this is the cheap version. And the cheap version actually outperforms the Steam Deck by 50%. And so we can sell this for a little less than the old Steam Deck.
Yeah.
We're giving you more performance. But I would want that purpose-built thing. I wouldn't want like this thing that's meant to be like 15 watts or 10 watts, whatever I said it was, that has 2, 2, and 2. Give me just 4 low power cores purpose-built to do this, because unless you can make this so small that the cooling is negligible to really reduce cost and size, you need more than 4 compute units. You're only going to get that if you purpose build the CPU to use less than 5 watts. And Bumblebee is like meant to be a little different than that for netbooks. So
yeah, and with Bumblebee, it could lead to a very hot device if you built that too small too, which if it used too much energy.
And I don't remember off the top of my head its power consumption. I think it is meant to use less than 10 watts. But again, 10 watts with still two classic cores using half of that energy probably. I prefer all low power cores, and this thing really be built to do that, and maybe made even smaller because they do that too. I don't know. Who knows? Again, maybe Valve could do that. Maybe Valve would just make it only 4 low power core, 8 compute unit RDNA 5 thing that is meant to use 5 watts and is like a 50, 60 millimeter square die that they could just pump out basically for free. Something like that I think would work better than Bumblebee. And all this is speculation. So, all right, let us now, besides the fact that Bumblebee exists, move on to the wrap-up. The wrap-up is, of course, these stories that we don't think deserve their own full conversation, but definitely deserve a mention. There's more evidence that's emerged of an Arrow Lake S refresh coming to LGA 1851. Now, what's interesting about this is it seems to suggest here, and this is from spotted at least by Mo, who tends to spot things that end up happening. If you look at it, though, it seems to me that it would basically just be higher clocks and maybe a bit better NPU. And it would only, there's also rumors that they wouldn't even call this a new series. They go to like, what are they at now? The 285K? They go to like the 290K and 275 and like a 270 or 275K. And then that would be it. Like, that's just what they would call it. And they might not even refresh the lower half of the lineup. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think this is that interesting because this wouldn't even match the X3D Zen 5 models. And I think the reason why I'm not going to spend too much time on this is I included a picture of this for Jar to show on screen. WCCF Tech asked, are you looking forward to Arrow Lake refresh? Most of the time, over half say yes. It was like 20% said yes. Or it was something bad.
Yeah, why?
Like, so
why care?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's worth mentioning, but if that's all it is like a few hundred megahertz more clock speeds and a better NPU, if even that, for only half of the lineup, I don't know why I'm really supposed to care. Also here, this was going to be a main story before this turned into a episode with 8 stories, and I had to cut some. MSI is switching their AI Claw products to AMD, and I think that's huge. I was basically told that Intel gave MSI like Meteor Lake chips for free with the promise they get Lunar Lake first if they don't make an AMD handheld, because I think Intel was worried literally all handhelds are going to be AMD and they're trying to argue they're efficient. And I guess they got away with their Meteor Lake handheld that was apparently just terrible according to everyone who reviewed it. A Lunar Lake handheld that really didn't beat the AMD handhelds. MSI's moving to AMD. Wow, what a blow.
Well, I mean, if we've talked, AMD really controls the handheld market, it seems like. I wonder if there's even that much interest in people buying the non-AMD handhelds at this point, just because, I don't know, they're so synonymous with the handheld market at this point. Like, the first big one that came out was AMD, and every subsequent one that's been well reviewed has been AMD pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, Intel had a brief time in the sun when they had Ice Lake and Tiger Lake. Tiger Lake handhelds are pretty awesome, I think, comparatively. But I mean, Meteor Lake was just a complete bust. It was inefficient below 30 watts, which is when you would want to use it for a handheld. And then Lunar Lake was fine, but again, like, Lunar Lake really doesn't beat Strix. It's just Strix with less cores. Like, it doesn't, and it costs more to make. And that's probably why they're switching as well. It's probably too expensive to make a decent profit in that MSI Claw series. So, I mean, there you go. I mean, that's it. There it goes. No one's using Intel for handhelds anymore. I think that's symbolically a pretty big blow, because the only reason MSI would do this when they're like getting CPUs for free, I was told from Intel for some of these, is if it's worse than free.
Yeah, if people don't want to buy it, who cares?
But my wonder, though, is if this even matters. I mean, MSI's Claw series is synonymous with crap now, so I would suggest they might want to change the name from Claw. I don't know.
Maybe.
Gigabyte lets slip, as they always seem to do with a million things, that Ryzen 9000G is coming. It looks like it might be Gorgon Point APUs on AM5. And you know what? I know we get a comment about every episode below that is like, where are the 9000G APU leaks? Here's me saying, yeah, I think this is coming. I've heard that they're going to be refreshing their G series later this year from some of my sources. So I didn't do a video on it because I don't think that's a surprise. But yeah, this seems to be legit, not just from what other people are saying, but from what I've also heard. ASRock is to blame, apparently, for many Ryzen failures. I saw this was a big investigation by Gamers Nexus, where ASRock's faulty BIOSes were just burning AMD CPUs, I believe. And that has been a thing. I know Tech Yes City investigated this a lot too. Shout out to them, friend of the channel. But I don't know how much of it's AMD, but at least a lot of it's ASRock, it turns out. So FYI.
Yeah, that seems to be a problem from time to time with ASRock.
Yeah, so. I remember them. I had an ASRock motherboard back in the day, like over a decade ago. And I remember them being a good budget brand. You had one too with Zen Plus.
Yeah, I did.
And I've got to say that at this point, they've had a lot of quality issues lately.
It kind of hurt their brand a lot recently, yeah.
All right, ROCm support for Windows for Ryzen AI Max and RX 9000. Again, I don't have much to say about this, although I will say, they're about to launch RDNA 4 cards, I've heard, maybe with 48 gigabytes of GDDR7. Months before that, ROCm support's added to RDNA 4. I think more evidence that they do have...
that they're going for something bigger.
Well, not bigger, faster.
Better, faster. Yeah, it's not bigger.
Build back better.
Actually, maybe slightly smaller.
No, sorry. Gross the economy. RTX 5050 specs have leaked. I don't even remember what they were. Let me pull this up to, what is it? It's 8 gigabytes, presumably. Oh, yeah, it's like half of the specs. It's unknown if there is a GB207 still, or if this is a really cut down 5060 with GDDR6. Or no, I think this rumor says that it probably uses GDDR7 as well, which is interesting if it does. I thought for sure they'd go with GDDR6 with this too. So I don't know. I guess that's coming. Yay, more 8 gigabyte cards. Here's a fun one, Dan. I don't know if you saw this in the news, but a user apparently received a bunch of backpacks packed inside of a 5090 box instead of a 5090. And I didn't do a ton of due diligence on this, but I did look into it a little bit. In my memory, like a week ago, my memory was that they reverse engineered this up the supply chain, and they're like, someone did this in the factory. Someone in the factory made the swap, and it shipped to the US and was sold with a bunch of backpacks. I was thinking of this today too, and I added this to the script. Can you imagine if you're the person who bought this at Micro Center, and you open your box, a bunch of fucking backpacks fall out, and you're like, how am I going to convince them I'm not lying?
Yeah, that would be really annoying. I mean, at least looking online, this has happened a few dozen times.
I didn't know that. So it's an operation going on over there.
So I guess it's more believable that you're one of the like 30 something than one guy that's like, I swear to God, there's a bunch of backpacks in this.
So can I keep the backpacks? Also, I want my money back. And please, for the love of God, don't accuse me of just lying about this. Although this does pertain in the future, though. Could people in the US start saying, oh, there were these backpacks. Look up the backpacks that were used in the scam and try to get away with it. I don't know. They might want to start weighing the boxes at Micro Center before they're sold. All right. And then the final part of the wrap up here. There's also been some at least temporary PlayStation 5 price drops. I already brought this up in my rant about Xbox when they were raising their 10 gigabyte Series S prices. Sony's been dropping the Pro prices. I don't have much to say here. I just think this is notable that they're dropping prices. This would tell you that they think for demand to keep up with supply, that they think the Pro should probably become $650 or something.
Yeah, I mean, not too many thoughts here either. I hope they're not. I hope they're permanent. These become permanent as they do sometimes. That's about it.
Yeah, again, I keep thinking this. If the Series S wasn't $379, if the Series X 2 terabyte wasn't like over $700 right now, I'm telling you, these would be like $629 and $349 or even $329 maybe for the PS5. But Sony, I believe, refuses to not charge $20 more than the Series S for the PS5. And I get it. I want to know when push is going to come to shove here, because just because Microsoft's charging $379 for a Series S doesn't mean anyone's buying it. And at a certain point, PlayStation's going to have to charge less for the PS5 if they want to keep up with PS4 sales aligned. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I really don't know what's motivating for Microsoft to try to sell them at that price.
They don't care about gamers. That's what.
Whatever.
Not kindly asking, telling you to join the Patreon. 999 writes in, says, what are your thoughts on recent PlayStation price drops? Well, I guess we just gave you most of them.
Good.
But yeah, this would tell me Sony's comfortable either oversupplied the PS5 Pro before tariffs or thinks they need to do this to keep up with demand right now. Probably both. Jensen Wang, CEO of the world, writes in, man, that name keeps changing, and says, in a world where AMD merged into Nvidia instead of buying ATI, would Intel still exist? Or they just become a fab?
I mean, I'm trying to think do you think that would have gotten blocked? I guess back in the day, maybe not, but...
Well, they didn't block AMD. I believe, too, I believe there were rumors a long time ago that AMD was trying to buy Nvidia. This is true. And I believe I've had people at Nvidia tell me this happened.
That's hilarious.
People at AMD told me this happened, who were veterans for that long, that said Jensen was open to it, but Jensen wanted to be made the CEO of the new company. He said, yes, you can buy Nvidia and you'll get rich by doing that, but I'm the CEO.
But I'm CEO.
This is a counter hostile takeover. And they didn't say yes. And I mean, I think I'm glad they didn't, but that would have been a juggernaut. Yeah, I think Intel will be in a lot of trouble if that happened. Oh my God. And ATI would probably have been bought by Intel. They'd have had to have tried to.
That would have been a weird world if that had happened, I guess. But I'm just wondering if that had happened in like when that could have happened, it would have been like what, maybe 2014 or something?
Yeah.
Or 2012.
Oh, no. This was I believe like 2005 or something weird, or 2003.
No, I'm saying if Nvidia had gone and tried to buy AMD at their low point.
But I'm talking about AMD buying Nvidia when AMD was on the top.
Oh, I know. I'm just curious if that would have even worked.
No, I don't think Nvidia ever really wanted to buy AMD. I'm sure someone will send some link where, they did, but I don't believe that's ever. They didn't want to buy AMD. They just wanted to make the merger, and then Jensen would be in charge. But Jensen didn't want to be part of another company unless he got to call the shots. All right. Well, that is going to do it for this episode. A little short on the submissions from patrons, but all the more reason to say, remember, if you are a patron, submit questions. Remember that you can join the Patreon as well. Right now, we're looking at upgrading the tiers probably within the next month and adding more features, and that will change some of the prices as well. But remember that if you join now And we do now allow a discount for signing up for an annual membership. You'll get access to that tier and any upgrades we add to it without any changes in pricing for the next year. So we're looking at adding the ability for you guys to call into episodes and submit voice messages for die shrinks and stuff. And then also a few new bonuses for the tier. So whether you join now or not, consider joining now and keep paying attention because we're adding more and more features to the over 1,000 supporters of us on Patreon. We cannot do this without them. And a new die shrink just came out as well that looks at the evolution of Nvidia and actually how the tech press has covered Nvidia, where me and Dan, or at least me specifically, make the argument. I don't know that Nvidia has changed that much. I just think people have finally caught up to get to their shenanigans and are finally tired of them. But, you know, hundreds of those bonus die shrinks out there if you join us on the Patreon, even at the lowest tier. Dan, I don't have much else to say. I am pretty tired now, though. Do you have any final words?
I don't think
All right.
so.
Once again, subscribe to Moore's Law on YouTube. Ring the bell button. Comment below. Share. Like this podcast. Subscribe to Moore's Law on a Patreon app that is your favorite, choosing your favorite choice. And make sure you set that to auto download. We're now part of our podcast network as well, so that helps us out a lot there if you subscribe to Moore's Law on a podcast app. Please make sure that you do that as well. And otherwise, I've already showed the Patreon. Have a good week, everybody.
Goodbye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie Nosugada as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie Nosugada as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guest questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels:
Brad Medlin, Drita Fools, E.G.S., Daniel D., Deke, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Daniel Hyde, MJB1, GZ Ziggy, Toka, Compress AI Blocks, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferreira, Valkamalev, Jensen Wang, Sarcastro, Icarus Risk, Evan Dingle, Hal Buma, Shredbird, Sammy Malas, The Boss Haas, Chrysantine, Jonathan, Amiable Chief, Neith Rizink, I Should, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Gamers Unite, Travis Gooding, Mad, Zoot Taylor, Greg, Michael McGee, Patty Cake, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, Tommy, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Cole Addick, Cameron, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Michelle Pell, Win Wang, Hexapuma, Reginald Ari, Tikadam, Winstar, Corey Leonard, James I. Radar, Little Germany, John Swin, Shay, Milton, Melodic Warrior, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Mac Daffy, Stephen Dick, Justin Bussell, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Harlan, Jason Ankema, Joseph Kelly, Slushbaugh, Him Segung, Brian Wright, Sophos, 7771, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Alex Vega, Freedy, Michael Cozy, Thalo 215, Crystal Joe, Elbergun, Keekum Solarized 80, Sputnik Brian P, Hoodat 42, 37 by 73, Cornster 671, Penta Winter, Hal Richard, Omega Doge, AI Soldier 789, John Wick, Boomstick, Mr. Tiger, State Farm Snake, Hugo Ander Kiwi, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Curry King 3, Nixus Mania, Sheriff Lotfi, Ryhill Cheap Bulls, Smash Axley, Kevin Kuntz, Armand Vakatura, Karim Al Masri, Callan, Reichel, Jonathan Harris, Kai Noosh, Kagani, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.